Rain threaded midtown into sheets of liquid light, and the city looked like it had been wrapped in glass. Ellen Lewis walked fast, sleeves damp, breath fogging in little ghosts, that post-shift numbness clinging to her bones, the kind that smells like espresso and tired hope. 3 blocks to the apartment, 2 to the creaking radiator, just 1 to stop thinking. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voicemail, 30 seconds long. She ducked beneath the bodega awning, dropped stitching the sidewalk like silver staples, and pressed play. A man's voice, low, disciplined, the kind that folds a room into silence without raising itself. Midnight. Don't be late, and don't wear red. Not comedy. Not a wrong number oops from some drunk stranger. There was the faint clink of ice against crystal, carpeted quiet, a hush of money. She almost laughed anyway, a soft exhale against the cold. She hit delete, or she thought she did. Then she kept moving, the rain turning her coat a shade deeper, the city pretending it didn't see her. On her block, a black SUV slid along the curb like a shark fin. She didn't notice. She was counting the rungs of her ladder. Key, lock, door, sanctuary. The lobby's yellow bulb sang its electric complaint. Up the stairs, down the narrow hall that smelled like boiled cabbage and someone's too hopeful incense. She set the tote down, let her head rest a second against the wood, and inhaled quiet like medicine. Another buzz, same number. No text this time, no second message, just the throb of connection and the manicured silence that followed. Spam, she decided, tossing the phone onto the small table with the chipped blue bowl. Big budget spam. At 11:38, headlights combed her blinds. A car door closed with a certain softness. No slam, no show of force, just certainty. Ellen shouldn't have looked, but curiosity was her worst-kept secret. She parted the blinds with 2 fingers and froze. He was down there. Tall, dark coat, the kind of stillness that read as command in any language. He checked his watch without impatience, lifted his phone and spoke, eyes on her window as if he already knew what he would find. Another vehicle rolled up behind the first. The street exhaled men who moved in pairs, the choreography of professionals. Ellen's pulse scattered. She should have stepped away. She should have called someone. Instead, bare feet slapping at the scuffed floorboards, she unlatched the door and cracked it open. "Can I help you?" she called, voice too bright for midnight. For a single fraction, he looked relieved, like a knot he'd carried too long had loosened by accident. Then the expression shut off. He lifted 2 fingers in a tiny surgical gesture. Boots pounded the stairs, the quick, contained thunder of men built for this moment. She slammed, but the door hit a shoulder that felt like oak, a cloth clamped over her mouth, a sting, air gone crooked. The last thing she saw was a silver ring on a gloved hand, the lion's head hammered and patient, catching a glint of the hall light as the world tipped. Cold woke her, hard, honest cold, concrete under her spine, metal in the air. A single bulb swung, throwing a hush of shadow across walls that didn't like to be watched. Her wrists burned where nylon bit. Voices whispered from the corner, calibrated, not careless. He stepped out of the dim like a verdict that had learned elegance. Black shirt beneath a tailored coat, sleeves pushed, forearms corded. No watch. The lion ring was the only ornament, a kingdom made into jewelry. He didn't need volume. His quiet would do. "Who sent you?" he asked. "My name is Ellen." "Who sent you?" he repeated, closer now, but without impatience. As if patience itself owed him rent. "Nobody," she managed. "I work at Rodriguez Coffee on—" "Then you know the number that called you," he said, "was not for cappuccinos." Her breath stuttered. "You grabbed the wrong woman." He studied her face with the focus of a man who reads people like documents. The fight under the fear, the quick math behind the eyes, the way her chin held the line. From the doorway, another voice, a rasp with loyalty in it. "She's a mirror, boss." "Close enough, but not enough to fool me," he said, without looking away from Ellen. He tilted his head, and the lion flashed. "Tell me about the message." She swallowed. Midnight. Don't be late. Don't wear red. She held his gaze. I deleted it. It deleted itself from the record too, he said, almost to the room. Interesting. He lifted a hand. A door opened behind her like a trap being gracious. The room beyond was a contradiction. Silk sheets, velvet drapes, a chandelier soft as frost. Luxury curated to embarrass fear. A tray arrived. Bread, fruit, water collecting pearls of condensation. The lock clicked, practical as a period. Time misbehaved. She paced. The chandelier hummed. She stared at the water like it might be a test. The door swung and he came in again, coat gone, sleeves rolled. That bare band of skin around his wrist, where a watch might have sat, looked like a missing word. He scanned the tray, then her, then the window, then back. If I wanted you dead, he said, you wouldn't be thirsty. Assuming competence is a start, she snapped, because surrender felt like the wrong language. What's your last name? Lewis. Ellen Lewis. He tasted it, as if names carry weather. Drink. She didn't. He eased the bottle closer anyway, the smallest courtesy, and a more dangerous one than kindness shouted. Why me? She asked. Why this? He didn't sigh. Power never sighs. But a breath passed through him that sounded human. Because I buried my brother, he said. Because the woman who helped make it happen looks enough like you to tempt cowards. Because you answered a call meant for a ghost. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. The apology had no strategy in it. It made him look away for a beat, as if the floor demanded attention. We'll verify what needs verifying, he said. Until then, I'm a prisoner. You're a problem, he corrected almost gently. I keep my problems in sight. He reached the door, his hand paused on the knob. He didn't look back, but the edge of his mouth confessed an impulse to. Don't wear red. Because it reads as defiance? She asked. Because it stains. When he left, she sat on the edge of the bed and counted breaths until numbers felt like a superstition. The chandelier tore moonlight into diamonds. She imagined a hand knocking on a door that wouldn't open, a laugh in a car full of men who'd forgotten how. She imagined him as a boy and then hated that she could. Morning found the windows and made them speak. A book lay on the table that hadn't been there before. The Goldfinch. A ribbon marked a chapter about loss dressed as art, art dressed as loss. He was listening, or he was noticing. She wasn't sure which one scared her more. The second time he came, he brought a file and put it between them like a line in sand. The top photo showed a woman at a hotel bar, Ellen's hair, Ellen's jaw, another woman's temperature in the eyes. The next image captured a figure at a Soho entrance, coat flaring. Ellen owned that coat. So did half of Manhattan. Riley Trent, he said. She met one of mine and sold him out. Sold my brother out. The number linked to her last sighting kissed a tower near your cafe. Phones kiss towers for strangers every hour, Ellen said. That doesn't make me her. Near, he allowed. Near sometimes kills. He flipped to a transcript. The voicemail timestamp matched her night. A one-word text. Midnight. Sent. Unsent. The ghost of a message. Someone wants you to find Riley, Ellen said slowly. Someone wants you to find me instead. He didn't blink. Men who carry cities don't blink when truth lands. Do you take sugar in your coffee? No. What color do you mix first when you mend porcelain most people would throw away? Bone, then smoke. Good, he said, and it was unclear if he meant the answer or the person giving it. His voice lowered, less blade, more cello. My brother's name was Luca. The room changed shape, like the walls had been waiting to hear it. Ellen felt something catch behind her sternum, a slip of ache that wasn't for herself. I'm sorry, she said again, and he absorbed it like water poured on stone, taken in, slowly, invisibly. He closed the file. The paper thud was almost ceremonial. We'll see you, he said, and the pronoun we carried an army behind it. Eat. I'm not hungry. You're terrified, he said, with no cruelty. It burns calories. He left. The chandelier performed its soft, glassy breathing. She touched the book ribbon and told herself she was only passing time, not accepting gifts. Far below, the city rehearsed another storm. Another man arrived at noon, shorter, wide-shouldered, hair close to the scalp, the watchful calm of a soldier who'd learned patience by force. He set a tray down and gave Ellen the world's smallest nod. "Marco," he said, "eat. The boss thinks better when people around him don't faint." "I'm not around him," she said, then looked at the door in the hall and amended, "I guess I am." "You tried the staff stair last night," Marco added, matter of fact. Ellen felt her ears warm. "And?" "I fixed that lock myself." He let it sit a beat. "Don't try it. You don't trust me. I don't trust locks. People follow." "Is that a philosophy?" "It's how I keep men breathing," he said, including him. That night, rain came hard enough to erase edges. He returned, smelling faintly of it. He stood at the window and rested 2 fingers on the frame. It looked like habit, or prayer. "Who gave you the book?" she asked. "A housekeeper who has a daughter who reads on the subway," he said. "She's convinced fiction prevents crime." "Does it? It kept you from trying the staff stair twice." Ellen huffed a laugh. "Fair." He looked like he might say something else, something with the word Luca in it, then didn't. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was a bridge with a toll booth and no posted price. "Eat," he said. "Ritual now." She broke bread and tore it in neat halves, as if restoring it later might be required. He watched her hands, surprised to find he preferred this to the sight of a ledger balancing or a rival flinching. He left, and for the first time, he hesitated at the door. Half a breath, a fraction, the ghost of a man who almost looked back. Across town, a woman watched a grainy feed on a tablet. Ellen's profile, her lifted chin, the way David's shoulders squared, then softened. "Close enough," the woman murmured. "Close enough to cost him." It rained harder. The chandelier brightened, then dimmed, as if deciding whose side it was on. Ellen lay awake and listened to the house breathe. Somewhere in the hall, footsteps paced, measured, restrained, counting something she couldn't name. The wrong number replayed in her head, the right voice threaded through it like wire. What if he believed her, truly believed her? Would that unlock the door, or lock something more permanent in its place? And if the woman in the photograph stepped through Ellen's skin to claim her face, what would it cost to take it back? She didn't have answers. She had rain. She had a lion glinting on a ring when the light turned. She had a man who seemed to pull the room around himself without trying. And she had the smallest, sharpest suspicion that the night had not mistaken her at all. Outside, headlights pooled and slid. In the dark across the street, a lens adjusted, patient, unblinking, already writing the next instruction. Midnight. Don't be late. The clock in the hall clicked once, like a trigger being taught manners. The door's lock gleamed. The city waited to see which of them would open first. By morning, the rain had traded its fury for focus, drawing fine silver lines down the glass as if the city were being measured for a suit. Ellen woke to the sound a house makes when it knows it's being watched. Velvet quiet, careful footsteps, the faintest echo of someone delaying a decision in the hall. The chandelier no longer glittered, it glowed, conspiratorial. On the table, the goldfinch lay open where she was certain she had not left it, ribbon moved 2 chapters deeper. He had come in while she slept, or someone had, someone who believed stories could keep a mind from breaking. She washed her face in a bathroom curated like a magazine spread, and caught her reflection in the mirrored door. The same brown hair, the same stubborn mouth, the same eyes that refused to cancel hope. But the room added something. Edges. She was a softer shape set inside a hard frame. It made her look almost like the woman in the photograph and nothing like her at all. The lock clicked. She turned too fast, pulse doing the clumsy dance of a guilty party with nothing to confess. David Ranieri stepped in without hurry, coat unbuttoned, a weather front contained in a man. The lion ring picked up the light and threw it back as if the room were a courtroom and light were testimony. "Good morning, Ms. Lewis." His voice carried that unforced quiet again, the kind you hear right before a verdict. Is it? She asked. Hard to tell inside a jewelry box. The corner of his mouth acknowledged the joke without paying for it. He set a second file down, a thinner one, elastic-tired, edges softened by use. I had something pulled for you, he said, a transcript of what we found on the number that touched yours. You mean the wrong number, she said, crossing her arms, unless we've decided to rename mistakes. His eyes tracked the movement, quick, clinical in spite of himself. We'll both call it what the evidence allows us to, not what we'd prefer. Sit. She sat. He didn't. He stood off her shoulder like a map legend, close enough to read, far enough to control the terrain. He laid out call logs, a tower ping, a thin line of text messages that behaved like a heartbeat, steady, then gone, then back again with that single word, midnight. Ellen leaned in. The edge of his cologne, cedar, something clean warm, touched the air between them and left. That text never landed on my phone, she said. It landed on mine, he answered, as if the room itself were routing messages around her choices. Forwarded, then scrubbed. Which means someone wanted you to see it and wanted me to look guilty. Or, he said, wanted me to come to you instead of her. She has a name, Ellen said. Riley Trent. The pause was small. It still mattered. She has several. Her throat tightened. Who is she to you? A debt, he said, and the word arrived already paid in blood. She turned a page, letting the paper steady her hands. The second photograph was grainier, a frame from a security camera. The woman's profile did a poor imitation of Ellen's. The jaw was right, the eyes were wrong. The posture said, I always win. Ellen had never felt that certain about anything but brushes and glue. She stands like a blade, Ellen murmured. You stand like a question, he said. Is that worse? It is more dangerous to me, he answered, too honest for theater, too fast to be staged. Silence drew a circle around them. From the corridor, a whisper of muffled radios, then the hush again. David shifted his weight, and the floor did not dare complain. You restore broken things, he said finally, as if returning to a topic that might open a safer door. What if the original wasn't as honest as the crack? Then you decide what truth the piece deserves, she said. You match what it meant to be, not what was lazily painted after, if you're good. And are you good? I'm better when men with rings aren't judging my process. That earned her the ghost of a laugh, silent, more breath than mirth. He closed the file and slid it aside. Eat, he said, and the word had broadened since last night. Less order, more ritual. There are only so many times you can use food as a spell, she said, but the tray had found her weakness. A delicate croissant she could hear flake when she breathed near it. She broke it. The steam rose. Butter made a case. She ate. He watched without watching, gaze moving from the window to the book, to her hands and back. What did you do, she asked, before you learned how to make grown men move with 2 fingers? He tilted his head. Luca would have liked that question. He believed the origin story was not a luxury, an obligation. So indulge him, and me. I did what boys do when a city makes itself a father, he said. I ran errands for men who mistook fear for respect. I corrected their mistake. Then I learned how to own the room without raising my voice. And the ring was his first, David said, looking down at the lion. He said I needed a reminder to be a king where I must, and a man where I could. Which are you today? Undecided. He set the ringed hand on the chair back behind her, not touching her, close enough that she felt the temperature of the metal rather than the man. Tell me something you've never told anyone you didn't love. The question landed like a hand on skin that hadn't been touched. She found a truth small enough not to wound and large enough to matter. When I finish a restoration, I leave one flaw, she said softly. Invisible to almost everyone. So the piece remembers it survived. Survival should not have to hide, he said. Sometimes it has to keep from being broken again. This time he did look at her fully. Whatever calculation had been running behind his eyes paused. She felt seen, not scanned. It frightened her more than the van. He stepped back first, self-preservation disguised as courtesy. Marco will walk you. We'll talk again tonight. Is that a promise or a threat? Both, he said, and left the room with the air following him like a disciplined hound. Marco arrived rolling the easy weight of a man who could turn a hallway into a checkpoint by leaning on a wall. He scanned the corners, fingertips brushing the door jamb, eyes doing the quiet math of distances. Stretch your legs, he said. House rules. Left is a dead end I keep on purpose. Right has windows you'll like. Windows I'll be allowed to look through. Depends how polite you look while you're doing it. He escorted her down a corridor dressed with paintings that didn't brag about their provenance. A narrow conservatory opened like a breath, plants drinking light, rain pattering against glass that had seen better storms. Ellen stepped closer to the panes. Midtown blurred to watercolor. Taxi yellows turned soft, pedestrians ribboned to a single moving shape. Who lives in a house like this and chooses silence? She asked. A man who knows noise is a map to the door, Marco said. And who doesn't want to hand out invitations? She glanced at him. How long have you known him? Long enough to have seen him wrong, Marco said. Long enough to see him try to fix it. He tipped his chin toward the far window. Don't stand in that one. From the street it's the easiest shot. A beat. Good to know. He checked his watch. 2 minutes. For what? For me to pretend I didn't hear you pick the lock on that drawer when I stepped out. Ellen blinked. I didn't. You will want to, he said not unkindly. Don't. Is everyone here fluent in riddles? Everyone here is fluent in regret, he said, and then the radio at his hip chirped. He listened, answered in 2 syllables, and eased back into stillness. You're fine, he added. He told me to make sure you saw the rain from the good window. That way you wouldn't hate him for the bad ones. She turned back to the glass before her mouth decided to betray her gratitude. Outside, a black car idled 1 block down. Nothing suspicious about a car in the rain. Everything suspicious about the way the driver never checked his phone. Friend of yours? She asked. Not one of mine, Marco said. Don't wave. I wasn't going to. You were thinking it. She was. The thought went quiet. The car eased away as if the street itself had let go. Back in the room, the goldfinch waited like a conspirator. Ellen read 4 pages without understanding a single line, then read them again and absorbed too much. Art is a hostage who teaches its captor how to be gentle. She closed the book and breathed through the irony. The door opened at dusk and the light framed him for a fraction, a silhouette that made the room remember which way was down. He'd shed the coat. The sleeves were rolled the same way, a ritual of readiness. The lion ring flashed. The bare wrist below it looked more like a vulnerability now than an absence. Walk with me, he said. She raised her brows. Aren't I supposed to stay where you can see me? I just changed where that is. He took her through rooms the house had not shown her, past a piano with its lid closed as if asleep, through a library that smelled like unspooled afternoons, down a short staircase into a hallway that felt older than the rest. Here the decorative plaster thinned. The floorboards told the truth in creaks. My mother liked this part, he said, surprising himself with the sentence as much as her. It reminded her of the first apartment. Nothing to pretend to be, everything to become. You keep it like this for her. I keep it like this because houses should remember who they were before they learned manners. He keyed a door and a small room opened. No chandelier here, just a lamp with a linen shade, a table, 2 chairs, a view of a courtyard where rain collected in the mouth of a stone basin. Interrogation, she said, half smile, half brace. Conversation, he said. I'm testing whether I can do it. They sat. The quiet here felt different, less curated, more earned. He poured water, set the glass within reach without touching her hand, and somehow the absence of contact hummed louder than touch. You didn't ask me why I brought the book, he said. I assumed I wasn't supposed to know you brought the book. I don't care what you're supposed to know, he said. I care what keeps your mind from chewing itself when the house goes quiet, and what keeps yours from doing the same. Luca, he said. Then, after a breath, Counting the people I won't allow to be collateral. It's a longer list than when I started. You're on it. It landed between them with the weight of a choice already made. Ellen felt it like a change in air pressure. She did not thank him. Naming it would make it smaller. Tell me about Riley, she said, back to the blade. Or whatever name she buys with false IDs. What do you want to know? Why a woman who looks like me is the ghost that keeps you pacing? He leaned back, the chair accepting his weight like an old friend. Because she learned early that people tell their sins to someone who knows how to keep a straight face. Because she decided the world owed her interest on what it stole. Because she mistook proximity for power. She wanted to be near rooms where decisions got made. She didn't understand the cost of owning those rooms. And Luca? He believed proximity could make a better man out of anybody. His mouth tugged, including me. He was wrong about some men. He was rarely wrong about me. Was he wrong about her? He hoped she'd change, David said. Hoping is a kind of gamble. He always bet on people. And you? I count cards. Thunder folded itself in the distance. The lamp breathed. He studied her the way a man studies a painting to decide if it's a masterwork or a forgery, looking for the tell that proves time instead of imitation. You keep leaving one flaw, he said, returning to her earlier confession. Where would you leave it on me? It was reckless, the way her answer pressed against her teeth and still came out. Not on you, she said. In you. Something only you would feel when you reached for it. A reminder you survived, not a banner you fly. I don't fly banners, he said. You wear one on your hand, she said, glancing at the lion. He looked at the ring, then at her. Touché. Another silence, the good kind. He stood, suddenly, before she could turn pulse into composure, and the chair grazed the floor like a warning. Tomorrow, he said, we'll stop pretending this is only about phones and photos. You'll dine with me. Dinner, she said, aware of how the word dragged an old life behind it. In your ballroom of knives and forks? In a room with candles, he said, and with witnesses who don't speak unless I ask. You make that sound reassuring. It is, given the alternatives, he said, and for the first time she noticed the tired edge to his eyes. He looked just then less like a legend and more like a person wearing one. He walked her back through the house. At the library door he stopped so abruptly she nearly brushed him. Nearly. Her shoulder warmed in the ghost of a touch that never happened and felt louder than if it had. He tilted his head, listening to something she couldn't hear. Then he moved to the window and adjusted the curtain 2 inches. From this angle she saw it too. A camera glint across the street, small, patient, unblinking. Whoever held it had chosen a vantage with a stubborn confidence that read as I live here now. He didn't curse. He didn't bark. He simply breathed out once, as if to fog the glass, and the fog did not come. Is that her? Ellen asked, voice low. Or someone who owes her a favor, he said. Either way, they're early. You expected them? I expect everyone, he said. It keeps me from pretending. Marco appeared in the doorway a heartbeat later, drawn by a signal that wasn't visible. David didn't look away from the glass when he spoke. Shift the outer ring east. Don't spook the bird. Copy, Marco said, and vanished back into the house like a pulse into a wrist. David let the curtain fall. The window returned to being a rectangle of weather. He turned, and whatever decision he'd made remained unannounced. Tomorrow, he said again, softer now, an agreement with himself. Wear something that isn't red. I don't own red anymore, she said. Good, he answered, and the word had 3 meanings she could feel but not name. At her door, he paused with the handle in his hand the way he had last night, caught between leaving and admitting he didn't want to. The lamp behind her made a small halo at her shoulder. He looked at it, not her, and said, almost to the wood, If you see a flaw in me I missed, tell me. I prefer the kind that can be fixed. Not every flaw is supposed to be fixed, she said. Some are meant to be forgiven. He swallowed like a man who didn't practice that word often. I'm out of practice, he confessed. Practice on someone who can't break you, she said gently. He met her eyes then, fully, like stepping into weather, and something unscripted crossed his face. He inclined his head, as if they had made a bargain neither would write down. The door closed. The lock turned. The chandelier brightened by a whisper, as if an unseen hand had touched the dimmer and reconsidered. Ellen leaned against the panel and let her breath even out. Through the wall, she heard it again, the measured pacing of a man who insists on walking his ghosts until they sleep. She opened the goldfinch and found her place and lost it again and didn't mind. Across the street, the small camera adjusted by a fraction, then settled, patient as winter. On the nightstand, her phone lit with an unknown number. No ring, only the glow, long enough to show a preview she shouldn't have been able to see. Midnight. Don't be... The screen went dark. The rain started again, louder, as if something had tapped the sky on the shoulder and said now. By evening, the house behaved like a theater catching its breath before the curtain lifts. Lamps lowered themselves to amber. Hallways learned how to hush. Somewhere a piano kept its lid down like a secret. Ellen stood before the tall mirror and took inventory. A simple black dress that didn't apologize, hair loose because armor sometimes looks like softness, a pulse learning a new tempo. She told herself not to like the way the dress made her feel tall. She told herself a better lie, that none of this would matter after tonight. Marco appeared right on the edge of a knock, as if courtesy and caution had struck a truce. "This way," he said, and offered his arm without touching. They moved through corridors scented with old books and faint citrus, past a portrait that refused to stop watching the room, down 2 shallow steps into something candlelit and deliberate. The dining room was a study in calibrated warmth, copper glow pooling on polished wood, crystal behaving like it knew how to listen. Only 2 places were set. The third chair at the head remained politely empty, as if power could attend without sitting. David was on his feet. Black shirt, sleeves rolled, the lion ring a quick silver punctuation near the candle's flame. He did not look surprised to see her beautiful. He looked prepared for it, in the precise way a man prepares for outcomes he can't afford to mishandle. "Ms. Lewis," he said, with the barest inclination of his head, "thank you for indulging my theatrics." "Dinner is not theatrics," she said, taking her seat. "It's a negotiation with hunger." "Then let's negotiate," he answered, sitting opposite. They started with silence, seasoned properly, no performative pauses, just the measured ritual of passing, cutting, tasting. The lamb gave under her knife with a soft surrender. Rosemary lifted and argued with the wine until the wine admitted it had been sharpened for this purpose. He asked her about kiln cracks and museum ethics. She asked him about the piano and who refused to keep it tuned. He said, "My mother." She said, "Mine sang along to the radio like it owed her rent." He smiled, a real thing that didn't ask for permission. It struck her then. This was the most dangerous room in the house, not because of weapons or windows, but because he was trying to be human in it. "Tell me a time you were sure and wrong," she said, surprising both of them. His gaze held a beat too long. "I thought a man would leave a dock at 2:10 a.m., he said. He left at 1:55. I arrived at 2 wow. 10 minutes changed a map. Maps are arrogant," she said. "They think scale can replace experience." "And you?" "I thought I could live without being wanted," she said, fork warm under her fingers. "Turns out I got very good at it. That's not the same as happy." The candle between them leaned a fraction, flame finding a new angle. He rested his forearm on the table, ring catching light. "I won't pretend I don't use wanting as leverage," he said, "but I also won't lie about it." "Please don't," she said softly. He lifted his glass, then paused, the rim hovering. "To the difference between leverage and care," he said. She touched her glass to his, "and to recognizing it in time." They ate. They let the clock in the hall keep its opinions to itself. Somewhere near dessert, he set his napkin down and slid a folder across the table with 2 fingers, the way you pass a fragile artifact you've decided not to hoard. "I had my people reprocess the image," he said. "Under a different light model. You were right." She didn't touch the folder. She looked at him. About the photo. About the lie, he said. The hand that made it belongs to someone who can afford patient mistakes. Riley. Riley has many hands. His expression thinned. This one is closer to us than I'd prefer. How close? Inside the circle that pretends it doesn't leak. He considered the empty chair at the head of the table as if it had offered commentary. Close enough to know what makes me pace. Your brother, she said. He exhaled once, as if the candle had asked him to. Luca liked to drive upstate when the city got loud. He'd make me pull over for peaches from roadside stands and call it strategy. He said sweetness was armor men forgot to wear. And Riley? She was a summer he tried to keep. Summers don't keep. He looked down into the wine and found nothing useful there. She decided what she couldn't have must be punished. And you enforced that decision for her. I enforced my own, he said, too calm to count as denial. I am reevaluating the evidence. He was doing it right there, and whatever part of her had been pleading to be believed went very quiet. He might still be dangerous, but now the danger felt like gravity rather than a blade. Why tell me? She asked. Because I prefer you armed with facts, not fantasies, he said. And because if I'm wrong about you, you'll weaponize either. Her laugh came out shaped like disbelief and gratitude. I would. Good. He rose, hand ghosting the back of his chair. Walk. They carried their silence down a narrower corridor, past the piano with its lid still closed. He stopped without warning and opened it. The first notes spilled out hesitantly, as if surprised to be invited. He didn't play a song so much as he let sound remember itself. Ellen stood by the fallboard, feeling the room rearrange around what music does to a house. You play like a man who trusts his hands more than his head, she said. I run a city with both, he answered, not stopping. But this asks for neither. It only asks for permission. And do you give it? I'm giving it now. He closed the piano softly, not a finish, an ellipsis. They moved again, into the old hallway he'd shown her in the afternoon, where plaster grew honest and the floor kept nothing to itself. He opened the small room with the linen-shaded lamp and the view of the stone basin collecting rain. Why here? She asked. Because this room tells the truth, he said. And because I'm about to show you something that prefers it. He set a slim device on the table, an encrypted handset, matte black, its screen already awake. He navigated a path she couldn't follow and brought up a single text chain, a contact labeled with nothing but a white chess knight icon. The messages were spare, transactional, wrong. Among them, a line that had colonized her life. Midnight. Don't be late. Don't wear red. From this phone? She asked, throat dry. From one clone to it, he said. Routed through 3 clean towers and a boutique carrier we audit twice a quarter. Someone inside, she said. He nodded once. Someone who believes I read at midnight. They're right. Lightning stitched light across the courtyard. The lamp flickered and committed to staying. She could feel it now, how the house listened to him and was learning to listen to her. Say it, he prompted. What? She asked. The conclusion your face already wrote. That I'm not the message, she said. I'm the mirror. And that terrifies me more than being the target, she admitted. He didn't pretend not to understand. People shoot mirrors when they don't like what they see. Or they fall in love with them, she said, and the sentence hung between them like a dare that wanted to be taken back. His gaze dropped to her mouth and then away, not prudish, not coy, disciplined. There's a reason mirrors get covered in houses of mourning, he said. You can lose yourself inside a face you're not ready to keep. She should have stepped back. She stepped forward instead, enough to feel the heat that lives between two people who have been pretending to be colder than they are. Neither of them touched. Both of them did. Why do you pace at night? She asked. To wear grooves deep enough that my ghosts have somewhere to sleep, he said. Tonight they're quiet. Because of me? Because of the decision I'm making about you, he said. And which is that? If I can't prove you are who I feared, he said, then it follows that I must protect you from who I am. She swallowed. That's not an equation. It is if you live the way I do. He set the device aside as if ending a conversation with a witness. Tomorrow I'll take you out of the house for an hour. Her heart jumped. That sounds like parole. It sounds like bait. The word changed the temperature of the room. She didn't flinch. She breathed, slow, careful. And if the trap closes? Then I close it on the hand that said it. Whose hand is that, David? I have a short list, he said, and a longer memory. Thunder rolled like furniture moved on a floor above. He stood. She stood with him, finding her balance a moment later than she'd have preferred. He reached for the door and paused the way he always did, caught between leaving and staying. Why black? He asked. What? Your dress, he said, and for the first time tonight he sounded like a man asking because he wanted to hear her answer, not because he needed leverage. Why not blue, or, God forbid, red? Because black listens, she said, and I needed the room to hear me. It does, he said. I do. He opened the door. A ripple of air came in. The house changed key, a note she felt along her arms before she named it. Marco appeared in the corridor too quickly to be an accident, radio at his shoulder alive with someone else's urgency. His eyes took one look at David's face and answered for him. East cameras just blinked, Marco said, and came back with a glare. Same angle as this afternoon. Across the street? David asked. 3 windows, Marco said, and a 4th that shouldn't exist. Ellen's skin went cold in a way that had nothing to do with drafts. The small camera she'd clocked earlier now had friends. David's voice simplified. Outer ring east, no noise. Let them think we haven't noticed. And if they try the service alley? Marco asked. Make it boring for them, David said. Boredom saves lives. Marco was already moving. David turned back to Ellen and, for the first time in days, reached for her without lying to himself about why. His hand brushed her wrist, barely, warm, specific. The touch was a question. Her pulse answered yes before she could deny it. I need you to trust me for the next 10 minutes, he said. Even if you hate me for what it looks like. I don't hate you, she said too quickly, then recovered. Not tonight. Good, he said, because I'm about to give the watchers what they came for. He stepped into the hallway and raised his hand, the same 2-finger signal she'd seen the night her life tilted. The house obeyed in smaller, subtler ways this time. A lamp lowered, a door drew itself nearly closed. A shadow took 1 step left so that a camera would see exactly what it had paid to see. Walk beside me, he said. They moved together down the long corridor toward the library, the old plaster throwing them a softer echo, the carpet muting their heat. He didn't touch her again. He didn't need to. The performance required proximity, not possession. He stopped at the library window and pulled the curtain 2 inches just as before, and the street performed its part. A blink of reflected glass, the impression of a lens correcting, adjusting, hungering. Smile, he murmured. She didn't. She did let her mouth soften on one side, the suggestion of a woman who couldn't help herself. He stepped a fraction closer, enough to be read as gravity. To the camera, they would look like a secret in the making. To themselves, they looked like people who had run out of safe distances. Now, he said very quietly, turn away. She did, toward the doorway. That's when the light went thin, as if electricity had been asked to prove its loyalty and failed. The house held its breath. Somewhere deeper inside it, glass chimed. Polite, distant, wrong. What is it? She whispered. Their second move, he said, and the calm in his voice came from practice, not peace. He took her hand properly now, no apology, and the contact anchored everything the dimness was trying to take. 2 rooms away, a door they hadn't used tonight gave up to a lockpick with an expensive education. Marco's radio snapped to a higher register. The house decided to stop pretending. Back, David said. Service stairs. He didn't run. He moved fast. That smooth, controlled speed of a man who has practiced evacuation enough times to never call it that. Ellen kept up, breath steady because panic ruins footing. The service corridor smelled of cedar and the past. Behind them, feet that weren't invited found the parquet and liked the way it sounded. At the stairhead, a shadow slipped across the landing below, brief, clever, armed. David drew a weapon she hadn't seen him carry, a black curve that looked like an opinion made of metal. "Stay behind me," he said. "You're bleeding if you get reckless," she said, and the sentence made sense to both of them, even though no blood had been drawn. He glanced back, that same unscripted look from the piano, and then the look was gone, replaced by the man the city knew. The first intruder reached the corner and froze a fraction too late, reading a room full of decisions already made. David's shot was disciplined, placed, persuasive. The man folded. Another set of boots faltered. Marco's voice, closer now, cut through with the efficient mercy of someone who never shoots to show off. "Two more," he called. "Copy," David said. Ellen didn't see the third figure until the figure saw her. A flicker of recognition where there shouldn't have been any. A woman's height, a man's jacket, a neutral walk that read, "I belong anywhere." The silhouette lifted an arm, and in that breath-long sliver of time, Ellen saw a flash of cold logic. If you don't like the mirror, shatter it. David moved first. His shoulder hit hers to pull her out of the line, a hard protective correction that left heat where it landed. The shot went wide and chewed the stair rail. Wood splintered like a warning. "Back," he snapped, and she did, because trust, once chosen, prefers not to waste time asking for reasons. The house found its alarm voice, low, internal, designed not to wake the neighbors. Doors that could lock did. Doors that shouldn't open learned not to. The intruder pivoted to flee and met Marco coming the other way. Something quiet and painful happened that didn't require a bullet. The body fell without spectacle. "Clear," Marco said, breathing like a man who respects oxygen enough not to squander it. "Not yet," David said, eyes angled toward the east wing, where a window he'd closed every night for 10 years now stood an inch ajar. They listened. The rain had returned, a tight, hard stitch now, not the drape it had been. In the distance, a second car turned over its engine and left before anyone asked it a question. Ellen realized she was still holding David's hand. He realized it too. Neither of them let go. "Who was she?" Ellen asked. "A reminder," he said, "that the mirror still wants to break." He looked down at their hands, then up at her, the calculation back and something warmer under it. "You're coming with me," he said. "Now." "Where?" "Somewhere they didn't map." "Bait?" she asked. "Grace," he said. "And cost." The light stuttered once, then steadied, as if the house had decided to be brave. Marco checked the bodies with the brisk courtesy of a man confirming sleep. Sirens began to test the far edge of the block, growing, deciding, choosing. 10 minutes, David said to Marco. Then the usual theater, and a favor. Marco nodded. Name it. Tell the street a story they'll like better than the truth. Always do, Marco said, and flicked his eyes to Ellen with something almost like a smile. You okay? I will be, she said, surprising herself with how certain it sounded. David led her toward the back, through the old hallway, past the room with the linen lamp, into the service passage where the walls remembered how to keep quiet. He keyed a door that looked like paneling and opened onto black air, and the suggestion of a metal stair vanishing down to a private alley. Still trust me? He asked. She looked at his hand holding the knob, the lion glinting, the veins at his wrist a steady map. She stepped through the doorway into the dark, brushed his shoulder as she passed, and let her answer be the way she didn't hesitate. The door closed behind them, and the night lifted its face, rain stippling their skin with small, insistent promises. Somewhere across the street, a camera lens lost them and did not forgive the gap. In the emptied stairwell above, the linen-shaded lamp kept burning, patient, as if it knew exactly where they were going and how much it would cost to get there, and as if the city, for once, might be late to catch up. Rain stitched the alley into a veil, and the metal stairs took their weight without complaint. David moved first, the lion ring a quick comet whenever a stray street lamp found it. Ellen a breath behind, her palms skimming the cold rail to keep balance. The air bit like coin. Somewhere, a siren tested the neighborhood and decided it wasn't hungry yet. "Mind the last step," he said softly. She did. The pavement met them with the slick indifference of midnight. A side gate yielded to a key she didn't see him turn. They were in a narrow passage that smelled of wet brick and old rosemary. Beyond it, a private courtyard held its breath. Potted laurels, a bench the color of old smoke, a single security light that refused to gossip. "Here?" she asked. "Here for 30 seconds, he said. "Then we ghost another block." "Why not now?" "Because they expect now." He angled his body to take the wind, to take anything the alley threw, and only then glanced at her face as if checking a map he meant to keep. Rain had crystallized on her lashes. He lifted a hand, slowly enough to telegraph the gesture past all alarms, and brushed a single drop away with the knuckle of his index finger. It should have been nothing. It wasn't. The touch was precise and unhurried, a correction he could have left to gravity and chose, instead, to make. "You're shaking," he said. "Adrenaline has opinions," she managed. "So do I," he answered. And for a heartbeat, it wasn't a quip. It was a vow he hadn't phrased yet. Footsteps skated somewhere on the street. He pivoted, still between her and sound, reading angles the way she read cracks. The steps faded. The rain redoubled. 30 seconds passed and refused to end. "David," she said quietly, "if this is bait—" "It is," he said, and the honesty steadied more than any lie could. "But not for you." "Then for whom?" "The part of me that believes grace is weakness," he said, "and the people who bet on that belief." He checked the gate again, then pointed at a shadowed break in the laurels, thin as a slit in an envelope. "Through there." The slit opened to a service lane so narrow the buildings had to exhale to let them past. They moved sideways, shoulders nearly touching, breath fogging in twin ghosts. At the lane's end, a door waited under a rusted awning, anonymous, dented, paint-tired. He pressed a palm to the plate, entered a code, and the lock clicked like a secret approving itself. Inside, a short corridor, bare bulbs, a stair like a spine. The place smelled of old lumber and stubborn soap. On the second landing he paused, listening with his whole body, then led her into a room a fraction bigger than the memory of one, utility sink, 2 chairs, a radiator negotiating with itself, a first aid box with a cross so red it seemed sarcastic. "We won't be long," he said, but long enough to stop shaking. He shrugged off his jacket. The shirt beneath was dark and damp, sleeves rolled to the unforgiving middle of his forearms. She saw a smear high on his ribs, not a wound. Old paint? Dust? Tonight had left its fingerprints. He reached for the box and she reached faster. "Let me," she said. He stilled, a rare thing for a man who lives in forward motion. After a beat, he nodded and sat. His knees were too close to both the chair and the past. She opened the kit, found gauze, found rubbing alcohol, found that her hands had stopped trembling the moment she had a job. "Tell me if it stings," she said. "It always does." She dabbed at the smear. Dust, not blood. Relief made her incautious. Her fingers, already there, slid along his side anyway, cataloging heat and muscle and a question she was trying not to write. He inhaled. The sound wasn't pain. It was a door easing open. "Sorry," she said. "For what?" "For touching you like I know where to put my hands." He looked up, and whatever calculation was programmed to appear in those eyes arrived late and wrong. Something else had taken its place. Something simple, human, defenseless in a way that made her ache where she didn't know she had room. "Ellen," he said, and it was the first time he'd said her name like the solution instead of the problem. They were too close for pretending. The room made them honest by making them small. He reached up, slow again, always slow when it counted, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His knuckles grazed her cheek. There was no performance in it. Only attention, only consent offered without words and asked for in the same language. "If I kiss you," he said, voice lower than the rain. It won't be strategy. She should have made a joke, deflected with something about leverage or maps. Instead, she nodded once, and the once carried a lifetime. He didn't rush. He closed the inches like a man crossing a border he planned to respect. When his mouth found hers, it was not the aggressive claim of headlines. It was a careful beginning that forgot to be careful in the second breath. Warmth first, then hunger. The kind of kiss that asks, "Are you here?" and hears yes in the way the other person answers. She leaned in, a hand at his jaw, thumb touching the rough edge of stubble as if to memorize it. He cupped the back of her neck like a question he finally knew how to hold. The radiator knocked once, approving or jealous. The room tilted toward them. He deepened the kiss in a way that said, "This is real and I'm not hiding from it." She rose onto her toes to meet him, and for a few reckless seconds the world outside reduced to weather and men who would never understand this softness as strength. He broke first, not away, just far enough to look. Foreheads touched. Breath traded. Up this close, his eyes weren't darkness. They were midnight blue, the kind you see only when you stay. "I'm going to regret stopping," he said. "Then don't," she whispered, the honesty tasting like relief. A floorboard outside answered for them. The sound was faint and wrong, the skitter of weight distributed by someone who wasn't allowed to be there. His head turned. Hers followed. He stood in a single disciplined motion, the gentleness folding up like a blade being sheathed. The room remembered why it existed. "Behind me," he said, already moving. She stepped into the negative space his body created without thinking. The door's shadow shifted, the smear of a boot cutting a strip of light. David drew his weapon, and the world narrowed to geometry. Door, sightline, angle. The knob turned a fraction, stopped, turned back. "Either they know we're here," he said, calm as a held pulse, "or they followed our air." "What does that even mean?" she whispered. "It means some people can smell choice." The knob turned fully. The door came in 3 inches and met his boot. The intruder made the mistake of pushing again. David's hand closed around the wrist that came through first. The gun clattered, and a short, quiet injury happened in the space between push and pull. A second figure tried the jam from the hinge side and met a lesson in leverage that would be painful to remember. The corridor coughed a muffled curse, then silence. "Third?" David asked the quiet. A soft click answered from farther down the hall, the almost sound of a lens retracting. The hair on Ellen's arms lifted. Somewhere outside the building, a car engine turned over and waited like a patient animal. "Marco," David said into the small radio clipped inside his waistband. "Ghosts in Stair B." "On my way," came the reply, a gravel promise. "Is this because of the Watchers?" Ellen asked. "Because of the story we fed them," he said. "They want Chapter 2. He checked the hall, then the stair, then the window, his mind laying out routes like thread. He slid the pistol back into its holster and turned to her as if he hadn't just returned 2 men to whatever gods they preferred. "I meant what I said," he told her, voice low again, closer to the kiss than the fight. "Not strategy." "Me too," she said, and felt the words take a seat in her chest and buckle in. He started to reach for her. He didn't know if it would be a hand to her face or just a reassurance to himself that she was still here. But the radio snapped again, sharper. "Boss," Marco said, and for the first time since she'd met him, the single syllable carried caution. "Detective on the line. She's coming with a warrant and a camera crew's appetite. 15 minutes, maybe less." "Rowan," David said, and something like respect intersected with calculation. "Of course." "What does that mean?" Ellen asked. "It means the city is about to take inventory," he said. "We need to be what they can live with." "And me? You're the one thing I won't let them catalog." From the stairwell below, a door banged, distant, unfriendly. Above, footsteps angled the wrong way. The building had learned it was a stage. Everyone wanted a line. He took her hand and didn't pretend there was another reason. "We're leaving by the roof," he said. They mapped the alleys. They didn't map the air. "Do you have keys to the sky too?" she said, breathless despite herself. "Only on Thursdays," he said, and there it was, the small smile that didn't belong to a myth. Lucky us. They climbed. The stairs sluiced rain from boots that had passed earlier. The light did its tired best. On the top landing, he pushed through a door that should have been locked and wasn't because someone had taught it to obey a different master. The roof was a slick plane studded with vents and a greenhouse half asleep. Wind lifted Ellen's hair and tossed it like a dare. The city unfurled in wet neon and black glass. He led her to the greenhouse and keyed another code. Inside, the air was soft and damp, smelling of basil and dirt and the kind of patience that grows things for their own sake. Strings of low lights ran along the rafters. Tomato vines leaned against twine like drunks confessing. For 1 second, even the rain sounded shy. "This is illegal," she said, because the obvious needed a friend. "This is necessary," he said. "I owe a woman tomatoes every summer I can manage it." "Lucia," she guessed, and the way his eyes warmed told her the guess was kind. He pulled a tarp aside and revealed a hatch that even the greenhouse had tried to forget. "This drops 2 buildings over," he said. "We can outrun cameras and decency from there." She laughed once, a bright note in the leaf smell. "You practice that line?" "I prefer truth when lying is harder," he said. The rain hit the glass and went flat, 1,000 little hands asking to be let in. He hesitated just long enough to be human and not long enough to be foolish. His eyes flicked to her mouth. 1 beat, undeniable. The kiss had been cut short by footsteps. The room had resumed. The roof wasn't a room, and that felt like permission. "David," she said, warning and invitation braided. He closed the distance the way he had before. Measured, certain, asking. She rose to meet him. The kiss was the same language in a different sentence. Deeper, a little wilder, the kind that says, "I choose this even while running." He held her waist. Her fingers slid into his hair, rain cool on the tips, heat everywhere else. He tasted like resolve and something sweeter he hadn't admitted to owning. The interruption came like a snapped string. A dull thud traveled up through the greenhouse ribs from the hatch he'd just revealed. Metal against ladder, then the scrape of a shoe trying to be quiet and failing. David pulled back, breath ragged, eyes clearing to a harder blue. "They're early," he said. "Or lucky," she breathed. "Luck is a kind of preparation," he answered, already moving. He grabbed the edge of the tarp and let it fall back over the hatch. The lights went to a hush at the press of his thumb on a switch she hadn't seen. The greenhouse became a dark shape on a darker rooftop. Their breathing sounded like confession. Below, the ladder creaked again. A hand, gloved, careful, pushed at the hatch from underneath. It didn't give. The latch was locked now. Someone tested it with the patience of a person who believes locks are merely suggestions. "Options," she whispered. 3, he said. "Fight here and ruin the basil. Flee across the south parapet and pray no one below looks up. Or let them think we vanished and be ghosts for as long as it takes." "And which do you recommend?" "The one that keeps you unphotographed," he said. "We disappear." He led her to the far corner where glass met brick. A slim service door wore a coat of paint so old it had become myth. He slid a pin from his pocket, no bigger than a promise, and teased the lock until it sighed. Cold air rose from the shaft beyond. "Ladder," he said. 15 feet. I'll go first. If I fall, I'm fine." "That's not how falling works," she said. "With me it is." He dropped into dark like he trusted it. She counted 2 breaths, then followed. The ladder rattled and her body answered with memory, hands on rungs, sneaker on rung, the honest math of descent. He reached, found her ankle lightly, guided her left where the metal wavered. At the bottom, his hands found her waist, not to claim, but to steady. The contact lit up the places the kiss had mapped. Above, the greenhouse hatch rattled again, harder. A voice cursed in a language built for sharp corners. The sound of a radio, a hiss of impatience, then silence. They moved through the belly of the building. A throat-narrow passage, a door that exhaled when it opened, a storage room full of forgotten chairs waiting to be useful again. He kept her close but not caged. When she tripped on a roll of carpet, he caught her by the wrist. and for a second the world toggled back to the utility room, the taste of him, the permission. It almost started again. The corridor ended at a metal door with peeling paint. He pressed his ear to it. Street murmur. Tires. No feet. He looked at her, the question in his palm. She nodded. He opened. Ere the temperature of consequence met them. Across the way, a news van prowled like a shark without a fin. 2 blocks left, lights flared blue-white and then softened, a predator looking in the wrong pond. "Rowan," he said. "On time for once." "She'll find the wrong door," Ellen said. "She always does first," he answered, a flick of fondness he'd deny later. They stepped out and down into shadow, then along a wall that knew how to keep secrets. The city stretched ahead, oblivious and interested, rain polishing it into something worth wanting. They made the corner. Another. A third. The block changed faces and forgot their names. "Where now?" she asked. "A place with worse coffee and better exits," he said. "And after that?" "After that, we hunt the hand that set this in motion," he said. "And we stop pretending you're anything but the person I refuse to lose." He didn't look at her when he said it. He looked at the street like it might argue. It didn't. They crossed under an awning and the rain softened to a mist that made everything nearer. She let herself look at him, really look, the jaw he clenched when he was about to be careful, the mouth that had kissed her like choice and not accident, the eyes that could be both steel and water depending on the light. "David," she said. He turned. "We won't get to finish that," she said, meaning the kiss, the sentence, the version of them that had room to breathe. "We will," he said, with a certainty that didn't bluff. "Just not on rooftops." A car door thunked somewhere to their right, a shape detaching from shadow. He moved without touching her and still put his body between. The car idled, then rolled, then passed, 2 silhouettes inside rehearsing someone else's scene. They walked. The city pretended not to watch and failed. They reached a metal gate, slipped through, descended a short flight to a door painted the anxious blue of old diners. He knocked twice, then once, then twice. The door opened a crack, and an older woman with a dish towel over one shoulder said, "You're late." "I brought trouble," David said. "You always do," she said, and swung the door wider. They stepped into heat and onions and the shelter of a place that had decided long ago to be generous. Behind them, rain washed the street clean of footprints nobody would see. Above them, on a roof that now held only basil, the hatch lifted, too late, and a gloved hand gripped empty air. And on a different roof, 2 blocks away, a camera lens shortened, adjusted, and found nothing but glass beaded with weather and the ghost of 2 people who had been there and now were not, leaving only the echo of a kiss and the certainty that interruption is not the same thing as ending. By dawn, the diner smelled like butter and plans. Steam fogged the front window into a milky privacy. The bell above the door clicked each time a delivery man came in, shrugged, and left again without looking twice. Ellen sat at the far booth beneath a humming neon clock, fingers around a chipped mug like it was a small furnace. David sat opposite, coat off, sleeves rolled, that bare wrist a quiet target the room decided not to aim at. The older woman, Nona to some people who weren't related, set down plates and a dish rag laced warning. "Eat. People make worse choices empty." "She's right," David said. Ellen cut into eggs that steamed like a city grate. "You brought me to a church." "It makes better coffee than most," he said. "And it has exits God forgot to count." Marco slid into the booth beside David as if the vinyl had been waiting for him. A damp map hit the table, corners pinned with salt shakers. He circled streets with a blunt finger. East cameras caught 3 faces from last night. Outsiders. But someone opened a door for them. "Inside," Ellen said. "Inside," David agreed. He tapped the map where a tiny X hid in the grid. "We flush them here." Nona refilled cups with the solemnity of a sacrament. "You flush them after you eat." She leaned to Ellen. "He forgets. Men do." Ellen smiled despite the dread that had learned her name. Across the window someone's reflection paused, too still for a passerby, too deliberate for a stray glance. The bell didn't ring. The reflection moved on. "Why here?" she asked softly. "Why show me this part of your world?" "Because you keep me human in rooms that would eat it," he said. "Plain, unornamented, dangerous." The door chimed. Detective Rowan Hale arrived with rain in her hair and an expression that said she'd walked into worse. She scanned, clocked the exits, and claimed a stool instead of the booth offered. "Nona," she said. As always, Rowan's coffee arrived without having been asked for. She turned the mug by the handle like it was evidence. "You running a kitchen or a command center, David?" "Depends on who's hungry," he said. Rowan's gaze flicked to Ellen. It wasn't unfriendly. It had the softness reserved for strangers who've been forcibly drafted. "You all right?" "I'm learning," Ellen said. "Careful," Rowan replied. "This curriculum has a high attrition rate." She turned back to David. "I'll give you 1 hour to make my day easier." "I'll need 30 minutes to make it harder," he said. Rowan's mouth twitched. "Then we're on schedule." Marco's phone buzzed once. He read, exhaled through his nose, and slid it across. A photo. A gloved hand placing a folder in an office drawer Ellen recognized from the townhouse, the old wing, the linen lamp room. Underneath, a single typed line. "You wanted proof." The signature wasn't a name. It was a stamp, crisp, mechanical, a white chess knight. Ellen felt the floor tilt. "That icon," she said, memory splicing. The handset in the small room. The chain labeled with the same piece. David's eyes thinned. "We left that phone on purpose," he said. "This is them bragging." "Or baiting you to walk back in," Rowan said. "And I'm sure you'd never—" "Oh, wait. They think we're predictable," David said, standing. "We are, but for different reasons." Rowan slid off her stool. "Then take me to church." The townhouse didn't look like a battlefield in daylight. It looked like money that knew how to apologize. The outer ring had been doubled. Marco's men were stones in a river, part of the flow, redirecting the rest. Rowan walked through with professional disdain and secret appreciation. "Nice moldings," she muttered. In the old hallway, the house remembered to creak. The linen lamp room breathed out the faintly floral scent of dust and paper and complicated nights. On the table, a folder. On top of it, a single photograph, Ellen's face in profile, the angle from the library window, David 2 inches behind her, the distance between them a visible sin. The chess knight had been stamped in the corner, a white cutout on black. "Please tell me that's not your stationery," Rowan said. "It's an invitation," David said, calm enough to bother everyone. He lifted the folder. Inside, text chains, phone logs, a printout of a flight manifest with 2 names blacked out and a third circled, R. Trent. The date sat like a bruise, the night Luca died. Ellen's mouth went dry. "Lucia's sister." Rowan's mouth thinned. "I have a case file with that name and a note that reads, 'Uncooperative, elegant liar.'" "She framed me," Ellen said. "She's framing the house now." "Not the house," David said. "Me." He flipped to the last page. There, stapled to nothing, a small square of glossy, the lion ring on a gloved hand, frozen mid-gesture, the caption printed underneath in ruthless block letters, "Kings fall slower in daylight." Rowan's eyes cut to Marco. "We found a version of that note last week," Marco said. "Across the street." "This one's closer," David said. A soft click. A door that hadn't been opened in 10 years settled on its hinges. Marco's hand went to his sidearm. David didn't move. He stared at the mirror above the mantel. "Come out," he said to the room that wasn't empty. The mirror swung inward on a pivot hidden so cleanly even the house had forgotten it could do that. A man stepped out first. Thin, careful, the kind of careful that comes from a life of not wanting to be caught on camera. Behind him, a woman with the posture of a person who had always been looked at and had learned to weaponize it. Riley Trent wore her hair wrong for Ellen and exactly right for herself. She smiled at David as if she were greeting a guest at a party thrown in his honor on his own estate. "You redecorated," she said, glancing at the lamp. "Tastes change." "So do aliases," Rowan said. "Pistol already up, badge already out." Riley barely looked at the gun. "Detective?" You're here to write the ending? On a good day, Rowan said. Today I'll settle for a middle. Riley walked a slow circle like a dancer who'd been told this was her solo. Do you remember, David, the first night upstairs? Luca laughing 2 rooms over because you were trying to argue with a metronome. He said you'd always prefer precision to rhythm. You made sure he had neither, David said. Oh, I? Riley's smile sharpened. No, I only suggested the room. She pointed to the folder. Evidence ages better in daylight. And your handwriting ages like a stamp, Marco said. She wrinkled her nose at him. Luca's shepherd. Her gaze slid to Ellen. And the shadow. I should thank you. I haven't seen him this off balance in years. Ellen met her stare and didn't blink. You altered my face to fit your story. You fit yourself, Riley said. I just gave the mirror a frame. Rowan stepped half a pace forward. You're under arrest. For what? Riley asked. Buying nice paper? For moving men like pieces, Rowan said. For moving this one, she nodded at the thin man. Like a piece he doesn't know how to be. The thin man looked at the floor. His hands were clean in the way that comes from washing guilt off. David's phone vibrated once. He ignored it. Riley's eyes flicked to the movement and back, cataloging. Still midnight on your mind? Still summer on yours, he said. The room held too much power and not enough space. The walls had learned to listen. In that listening, Ellen heard something she hadn't noticed before. The faint scratch of a fan behind the mirror. Air flowed in and out of the passageway. Riley hadn't come alone. The mirror was a door and a throat. Marco, Ellen said, barely moving her mouth. Behind. He had already heard it. I know. Riley tilted her head. Smart girl. I'm tired of being your ghost, Ellen said. Riley's smile lost patience. Then stop haunting him. David took one step forward and the house took the step with him. You used my brother to make a point, he said, voice flat and unadorned. You used me to underline it. I used you to finish a sentence, she said, not bothering to deny. I'm writing a better story. For whom? He asked. For the person who deserved the ending and didn't get it. Yourself, Lucia said from the doorway, voice breaking and iron at once. Everyone turned. Lucia stood there like grief had made her a new spine. She looked at Riley the way family looks at a mirror that insists on lying. You don't get to borrow his name to make yourself important, Lucia said. You don't get to borrow mine. Lucia, Riley breathed, and for one heartbeat the armor dropped. Sister, not suspect. Girl, not architect. Then it lifted again, fast enough to cut. Rowan's phone pinged. She glanced, her jaw set. We've got 5 minutes before uniforms turn this block into theater, she said. Choose your stage. Riley looked at David as if trying to determine where the flaw would be if he were a piece of art. You always liked Grace, she said. Let me walk out. Call it that. Grace has a cost, he said. I paid, she said, just as the mirror's passage breathed in. 3 men stepped through, wearing the bland faces of professionals, from nowhere, for hire. The thin man flinched. Marco didn't. Rowan didn't shout. She didn't need to. Don't. One of the men reached for metal anyway. David moved before the verb finished arriving. Marco's shot paired it, a perfect harmony. The man folded. The room erupted in the polite chaos of trained people doing impolite things. Ellen hit the floor behind the settee without being told. Lucia dragged her nearer by instinct and memory. Rowan advanced with economy, a surgeon with less patience. Riley smiled. It wasn't pleasure. It was recognition. Here was her element. In the span of a breath, it was over. 2 men down, one aiming at a corner he had already lost. David stepped into his sight line and removed the weapon with a decisive twist that future weather would remember. Silence landed, heavy and hot. Riley's hands lifted, slow enough to look like art. Take me in, she said to Rowan. I've had worse rooms. You'll hate mine, Rowan said, cuffing her with a speed that erased theatrics. Riley leaned toward David as the metal bit her wrists. You should thank me. For what? For the girl, she said, chin flicking toward Ellen. Without me, You wouldn't have noticed what you needed until it was too late. He didn't answer because there were too many answers. He looked at Ellen, only for a second. It was enough. She felt the ground reassert itself under her shoes. Outside, sirens crested. The house inhaled. Marco's radio hissed a warning. Rowan's men moved, swift, professional, sweeping up the detritus of a fight they hadn't gotten to win. Lucia's shoulders dropped as if a tendon holding up the sky had finally been cut. Then the ceiling trembled. It wasn't structural, it was intentional. A low thud from the attic where no one had walked in years. All heads tilted up at once. Marco swore softly. We missed one. Two, David said, already moving for the hall. They staged a second exit. Rowan shoved Riley into a chair and handed Lucy the cuffs chain like it were a leash she knew how to hold. Don't let her make you talk, Rowan said. She's good at it. Lucia's mouth curled. So am I. David reached the stair, and Ellen was there beside him before he could argue. No, he started. Yes, she said. You need someone who sees edges. He took the first steps two at a time, and then made himself slow. This stair respected neither speed nor pride. The attic door yawned at the top, dusty, insulted by light. Inside smelled like old wood and older secrets. A single bulb burned without enthusiasm. The window at the far end was opened by an inch. Rain ticked the ledge. David stopped. In the dust, boot prints, 2 sets, and between them, a single mark shaped like an inverted knight, stamped, deliberate, mocking. Ellen crouched near the print. They wanted you to see it. They wanted me to chase it, he said. And will you? He looked at the window, at the empty space where air had moved, at the city that had already started to swallow whoever had come and gone. He looked back at the woman who had kissed him like a fact and trusted him like a choice. The lion at his hand cooled. No, he said, surprising himself with the softness of the word. I'm done letting ghosts set the route. He took out his phone. Marco, he said, forget the attic. Lock the east block. Quiet. We're leaving. Where to? Marco asked. To pay for grace. They descended into a house that had been held together by will and the occasional bullet. Rowan was finishing Miranda with a patience that suggested she had coffee waiting on the other side of this arrest. Riley watched Ellen with something like professional curiosity. Congratulations, Riley said. You survived the audition. I wasn't auditioning, Ellen said. Oh, Riley murmured. You already have the part. Lucia tugged the chain and Riley's mouth shut. Sirens bled into the windows. Cameras tested their angles. The city, like a cat at a threshold, chose whether to come in. David crossed to Ellen. He didn't touch her in front of all these rooms and eyes, but the impulse lived in his shoulder. We go now, he said, before the street decides who I am today. Where? She asked. To the only place I can be something else. Rowan stepped in their path. If you run. I don't run, he said. I reroute. She studied him, then Ellen, and sighed like a woman who'd seen better men make worse choices. 2 hours, she said. Then my patience pays for nothing. Deal, he said. They moved, out through the service corridor, past the linen lamp room that had tried to witness too much, through the door that remembered how to be invisible. The rain had decided to bless and not punish. The block was busier, uniforms, neighbors peeking from behind curtains that might as well be theater scrims. As they reached the gate, a sedan across the street ignited, idled, and eased forward half a car length. The driver wore a cap. The passenger wore a face Ellen didn't recognize. The back seat offered a silhouette that was nothing like Riley and too much like a memory. David's hand tightened briefly at the small of her back. No claim, just a pulse. Don't look, he murmured. She didn't. She looked at him instead. They turned the corner, 1 block from the house, 1 block from the cameras, and stepped into air that tasted briefly like freedom. The text arrived before the thunder. Her phone, pocket warm, buzzed once. A number with no country code. 3 words. We're not finished. She showed him. He nodded as if a prophecy had been confirmed. Endings are for people who don't owe anyone, he said. And us? "We owe," he said, "but we pay together." A crack boomed behind them. Glass, not lightning. They turned in unison as a window on the second floor of the old wing burst outward in a glittering sheet. A figure climbed onto the sill, slim, fast, faceless at this distance, and leapt to the lower roof, then to the gutter, then to the alley with the trained grace of someone who had made a life out of exiting. Marco's voice barked in David's ear. "East alley, third. He's good." "So are we," David said. He looked at Ellen, and she saw the decision he'd made in the attic still alive in his eyes. No more chasing ghosts. Hunt the hand. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. They ran, not away from the house, but toward the part of the city that still kept its secrets in daylight. The street opened. The rain eased. Somewhere ahead, a door waited that only two people could open. A vault, a confession, a future. Behind them, the chess knight lay stamped in dust, patient, believing itself the author. It wasn't. At the corner, a second car crawled into view, unmarked, forgettable. Its window slid down an inch, and a silver ring, another lion, flashed once, catching nothing but dull light. David stopped like he'd been pulled by thread. Ellen followed his gaze. A voice drifted out, amplified by nothing but memory. "David," it said, "let's finish this somewhere quiet." The car door clicked. The lion shone again. The face behind it tilted, familiar and impossible, a ghost that hadn't gotten the memo. Ellen's breath hitched. "Is that—" The rain held its breath too, and the chapter ended where choices begin, on a wet curb, with a past that refused to stay buried, and a love that refused to be collateral. 1 second before names and guns and forgiveness had to decide who they belonged to. The car idled at the curb, like a punctuation mark that hadn't decided what it meant. Rain turned the street to glass. David stood in front of Ellen, shoulders squared, the lion ring glinting once in the half-light. A familiar voice floated from the car window. "You always were quick with names." "Alessandro Vale," David said. "Luca's godfather, the man who had taught 2 boys how to survive." "Let's finish this," Alessandro said. "Somewhere quiet." Minutes later, 2 cars moved through the wet dawn toward the river warehouse. Ellen's hand rested over David's, steadying both of them. "The voicemail," she whispered. The clink of ice. It was him. David nodded once. "He taught me every tell. He forgot I learned faster." The warehouse rose out of the fog like a secret. Inside, rope and dust and river air. Alessandro stood waiting, elegant as ever. A smile cut from the same material as betrayal. "No entourage?" David asked. "Confession is private," Alessandro said. "You used Riley. You framed me," David said. "I gave you purpose," Alessandro replied. 2 boys, 1 heart for business, 1 for risk. I protected the city from the one who'd burn it. You killed Luca," David said. "I kept him from destroying you," Alessandro said softly. "And now you've undone it all, for her." Ellen met his gaze. "You mistook control for love." Alessandro studied her. "And you mistake love for a weapon that wins wars." "It saved him," she said simply. David's voice cut through the air, calm and lethal. "You'll come with us." "Grace?" Alessandro asked, amused. "Grace and cost," David said. Alessandro lifted his hand. 2 fingers, the same signal that had started this nightmare. The knife flashed from his sleeve. Ellen saw the shift, moved without thinking, colliding into David's shoulder. The blade hit air and skittered across the floor. Marco was there before the sound finished, pinning Alessandro's wrist. Rowan Hale stepped from the shadows, weapon drawn, eyes cold. "Hands visible," she ordered. "Try something clever, and I shoot the clever out of you." Alessandro didn't fight. He only looked at David, something like pride cracking in his expression. "You learned grace," he murmured. "You forgot cost." "No," David said. "I'm paying it differently." Rowan cuffed him. Marco secured the knife. The detective nodded once, businesslike, not cruel. "You have your confession, Ranieri. Try not to waste it." When the door shut behind them, silence filled the space where power had lived. Ellen turned, hands trembling only now that the danger was gone. David reached out, fingers brushing her face. "You moved," he said quietly. "You would have," she answered. "I'm supposed to protect you." "You did, by letting me protect you back." He exhaled, a sound almost like a laugh, and drew her into his arms. It wasn't a performance. It was relief. Rowan appeared again, leaning against the doorframe. "I'm not writing a fairy tale in my report," she said. "Good," Ellen said, smiling. "But I might mention a woman who recognized a voice and a man who finally chose to listen." She turned to go. "You've got 2 hours before I start asking questions I don't want answers to." They walked by the river as the morning light bled through the mist. The city exhaled around them, ordinary again. "Where now?" Ellen asked. "To the house," David said. "To start over." Lucia opened the door with a quiet understanding only grief can teach. "Tomatoes are ready," she said. In the greenhouse, sunlight fractured through glass. The basil reached toward them, like it remembered. David brushed a leaf, the lion ring catching light one last time. "Luca said sweetness is armor," he murmured. "And grace is cost," Ellen finished. He looked at her. "And love is choosing what you pay for." He leaned in and kissed her. Not the desperate rooftop kind, but slow, daylight soft, full of promises too big for words. When they parted, she smiled. "What now?" "Now I make a list," he said. "People we won't let become collateral. Exits we don't use anymore. And us?" He unclasped the chain from his wrist and placed it at her collarbone, the lion ring resting there like a quiet heart. "Us is the part I won't negotiate." Weeks later, they married under the maple tree behind the house. Rowan came late, dropping off a sealed file marked closed. Marco wore a suit that fit like forgiveness. Lucia read from Luca's old notebook. "Choose grace, pay the cost, don't do it alone." They danced badly, laughed honestly, and let the house fill with new noise. The lion stayed at Ellen's throat, a story rewritten. That evening, they stood beneath the lights, the city glowing around them. A small envelope arrived on the step. No name, no stamp. Inside, 3 words. "We're finished." The chestnut printed faintly beneath, fading like an echo. Ellen leaned her head on David's shoulder. "Looks like we won." He smiled. "We just stopped playing." They walked inside as the maple dropped one golden leaf, sealing the promise, the peace, and the ending that finally belonged to them. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.